Greetings and welcome to Calm, Clear Conversations. I'm Christopher Johnson, and with me today is live stream guru, expert.
Guru, guru expert, um, creator, the whole nine
Yeah,
yards.
yeah. Gabe,
Yes, yes,
Gabe, the steam tornado. Okay,
that's correct. You know, hey, believe me, I've earned that moniker. So since I went ahead and earned it, I'm gonna wear it out and wear it as almost like a bright name tag as though I worked at Best Buy. So that's what I want to do.
excellent. So, all right, I have a question. I have a
Yes,
lot of questions.
let's.
Steam tornado.
Yes. Um, You want to hear the story? You
I
want
do want to hear the story.
to? Okay, well let's unpack that a little bit and talk about that because so I have to give credit where credit is due. There was another live stream creator that streams here on LinkedIn as well by the name of Travis Lochner, and Travis uh, was the one who, when me and him were sort of like streaming around the same times or whatever, anytime that he would invite me or I would go into somebody else's live streams, like I would get a link and somebody would invite me in to say hello, I would just sort of almost take over the conversation and start,
Mhm.
kind of doing my own things apart from what was going on with everyone else. So he goes, man, you're just, when you go there, you're like a tornado. You just wreak havoc. So, he started calling me the stream tornado. So he's like, every time you live stream and I watch you go on somewhere, it can go from just a 30-minute conversation and one person to 10 people and all of a sudden to the 2-hour conversation. And it just goes all over the place. So, prime example, uh, this is how me and you met. As a matter of fact, I was actually on a live with a gentleman named Reggie Waterman, and I wanted to come on, so he invited me on. And of course, I was like, hey, I would love to come on. There was another gentleman there who I connected with recently by the name of Robert Berry, and we started talking about how his voice sounded. I said, "Oh, you don't know about Christopher Johnson now, do you?" Um, I said, "Let me go ahead and start uh, tagging him and see if he will join the conversation." And lovely enough, you came there. We actually did a read off, and we were I believe you read some of Brenda Miller's book as well while we're thinking about it. But we did a read off, and that is like the kind of things that I do whenever I get in around. So because I'm connected with so many people, I just know. And again, I love to integrate folks and into a wonderful conversation. And it just ended up having a wonderful night, and it was an experience that I can talk about, and something that you'll remember when I mention.
Of course. Well, see, here's the thing. I will always yes and shenanigans.
Yes, uh, part of this reason why we're having this conversation is because of shenanigans as well. Uh, so it's kind of sort of so like I was dropping
Good for
shenanigans
me.
in the yeah. So I was dropping shenanigans in the comments watching a live stream that you were actually doing with another incredible individual by the name of Future Kane. So afterwards, she's like, "Oh my God, I was laughing at your comments. I was doing all this other stuff," and then she's like, "I got to connect you and Christopher." Not knowing that we had a previous uh, integration,
Hey.
but not formally. So I was like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Exactly. And yes, see, all right. One of the hallmarks of a LinkedIn live conversation with me, I'm a very curious person. And storytelling and laughter are always part of the conversation. So,
Yes.
it helps bridge the gap. It helps strengthen the connection. And it's all fun. And yes, I remember the shenanigans during the conversation with Future. Uh, you wanted to see less of me and more of my fictional cat.
Yes. Because we started talking about cats. I don't know how the conversation. kind of steered towards cats, but for some reason it was, and I was like, well, I was promised cats. I want to see this fictional cat, so um, I just kept harping on it and talking about a cat that didn't exist.
There you go. Now, and this is an international conversation because you, sir, are in Canada.
Dallas, no,
Wait,
Dallas, Texas. I am
wait a
in.
second.
Yes, I am in Dallas, Texas. Um,
Okay.
so
Well,
we are.
you were in Toronto for a while, and I do recall you were in Toronto, right?
Uh, briefly,
Briefly.
briefly.
Okay.
Um,
And you know,
it
hey,
was a blip.
it was a blip. Canada is our wonderful neighbor to the north, and hey, Lori
Look at this.
is see, um, I
Oh,
always appreciate when people pop in and let us know where they are observing the conversation, where they are engaged with us on this journey of curiosity. So,
absolutely.
a live stream expert, you do a live stream how many days a week?
So I've actually started a fourth season, which I launched last week, and it is every Monday through Friday at 8:15 Eastern Standard Time. So I'm doing 100 episodes for this fourth season, which yeah, I know, but it's the workloads that I'm used to. So my first real foray into doing live streaming and hopping in back in 2019, I did 137 episodes my first season. My second season, I did another 100 episodes, and I kind of stopped there. And then like the third season, it kind of started it back in, I want to say the tail end of 2021. Um, and I kind of ended here back in March. I only did like 25, so I did kind of like throttle back a little bit because I was doing other things. I was creating the calendar, so I had other things going on at the same time. So I was like, well, I don't want to take on too much too soon, too quickly. So, um, once I finished that out and said, you know what, it's time, because what I do is I kind of plan breaks now apart from going from one season to the next, because it kind of helps me recharge, reinvigorate the creativity and the batteries, and like wanting to get started all over again. So um, I took that time off and I said, you know what, it's close to that time and I wanted to start doing it. So I started putting together a different show idea and concept, and then I started to reach out to guests, and then I started streaming again live last Monday on August 15th was the first episode. So believe it or not, folks, you can catch on now. It's still early. I'm only going to be doing episode 8. So
And all right, so you have well, you have it scheduled every night, uh, and this again is called.
unfiltered live. So the reason in the hashtag there, I want people to follow the hashtag about the shows simply because I want to have really open and candid conversations with a lot of creators from multiple different places and platforms to kind of just open up a little bit apart from what they're usually talking about in the professional realm of what they do, here on the platform. So I am about jokes and shenanigans, but I'm also having about a little bit of value and a little bit of you know information that people can walk away with um, from a lot of these creators. So for me, I get to mix a little bit of your professional side, a little bit of your fun-loving side, and kind of find a middle ground. And that's what I want to do: is say, hey, you can just be you here and not have to worry so much about, hey, I gotta button up or whatever. So that's kind of the whole idea behind it, is telling folks, hey, you say what you want, do what you want, as long as it's not, derogatory towards a person or sect. There's also limits on that, but as long as you can just open up about who you are and some of the things, like the gentleman we had on last night, he talked about he's on the platform, he does LinkedIn's, he does social selling here on LinkedIn, he does sales programs, stuff like that. But we were talking about his affinity for playing Dungeons and Dragons. So we got to, again, we open up about those sort of deals that people are again, have apart from just doing what they do on social media. I think everybody has another side to them. So that was the whole idea of wanting to do this, and hopefully bring a different perspective to how people see these individuals that they might follow or connect with and go, wow, I didn't know that about him. They might even find commonalities. That's one of the things we talked about as well.
That's true. There, when we expand what we understand and know about folks, then yes, we form connections. And as soon as you said Dungeons and Dragons, it's like, okay, there is a whole network of folk. I know people who play. I know people who are dungeon masters. So yeah,
Right?
and now they will all be connected. Um, Now, that's a lot of live streams that you've done and that you're doing.
Yes.
Are there a couple of tips to help the average person, like
Oh yeah.
get
So
better?
there's always tips to get better. I even as a creator find tips to get better. So, if I'm using and seeing other individuals share tips, then I know that other that what I share in the other creators that I bring on, that is where like we add the value part of it to the conversation. So a lot of the tips that I tell for most people, and we were actually talking about this, is again, this is the most common one, is that you don't have to have all the fancy tech. You don't have to have all the cool stuff. This is really what you see here and what I have in my head, in my ears here, is all you really need to really just get started. Um, so that is the first thing, is like you don't have to hide behind a really big idea of having all this tech and everything else. You can just start simply with using what your phone has. A lot of the same features that you can use on your phones. You can record, you can use captions, you can edit. Your phone is almost your mini computer for you to live stream with. So you can just start with your phone and use that as the beginning thing. And then the other thing that we talk about is just simply create a strategy. Have an idea of like content that you want to create. So we were talking about this just on Mondays, as a matter of fact. We were talking about how, you know, as long as you find a strategy and share something that you're very passionate about, it's going to be very easy to conceptually come up with content. So if it is for you, like I said, the gentleman we had on last night as an example, Dungeons and Dragons, and he wanted to create content around, he could literally record hours upon hours of content or go live with his phone talking about how, hey, how to become a dungeon master, the 10 steps you need, or whatever. But he would be able to explain it and build out content that people would find interesting, would follow, would connect. And that is like one of the main things that I tell anyone who wants to get started in live streaming. Apart from just saying what we have here, is please think about what you want to, create. That's the biggest part. There was always a gentleman that I used to work with who was a defensive driving teacher, and he always used to tell me, I love when he told me this. He always used to tell me, think about your departure upon your arrival. So essentially, know how to get out as soon as you get there so you find the easiest route. Same sort of idea when you're creating content or when you want to do a strategy. It's like, where do you want to see endpoint A, endpoint Z, and how are you going to get there? So, that is another thing that I tell a lot of folks when they get started, because that, believe it or not, that is probably a lot of the times what hampers them when they get started. Like they can buy a microphone, they can buy a camera, but it's the content of like what I want to create, you know. If and have and again know what your purpose is and have intention with it, and it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to go out there and start doing it, because then you have less friction and roadblocks in front of you to want to create content. You're not thinking about hampering about ideas and looking at content calendars and looking at other places to find content, when you're able to start doing it internally from something you already know about and already passionate about. So that's
True.
that's a big one for a lot of creators when I tell them to get started. And then
Okay.
here's the next one that I tell a lot of folks: learn from other people, learn from other creators. You know, when people ask me how I got started, it was because I started watching others. doing what they do. And then it's my sort of evolution kind of went apart. Then I started maybe taking on more and more, but I start out with just learning the very simple foundational parts of what live streaming is by watching other creators and then going out and implementing those things that I've learned and practice and fall down and fail and do things wrong and then go back and try it again. So, that's just for, and again, you're going to make mistakes, everybody. I'm sorry. Um, do,
It's
that,
true.
that's part of it. I mean, even now, I mean, I've done so many episodes. I still make mistakes. Um, I mean,
Exactly.
it's just human. What's going to happen, and then you can run through every single technical aspect of what you're doing. Oh, I got all the buttons here. You can get all this set up. You can have it beautifully done, and all of a sudden, your internet goes out. You
Yeah,
can't. You can't just again. You can only do so much, folks. Just prepare for what you can and learn how to deal with those you can't. And there you go.
exactly. And see, that is the value having a live stream producer, a virtual event producer, someone to basically helm the endeavor when
Hmm.
things go in an interesting direction.
Right. They're the guys that it's it when you have somebody when you have the opportunity to have somebody who can help troubleshoot a problem, right? It just gives you another level of comfortability in wanting to do something. So that's why, like I said, you're just know that mistakes can happen to even the most prepared, the most knowledgeable, the most an expert. It happens to them all the time. So if it's happening to us, it's going to happen to you. So just
Exactly.
just take it in and go, hey, I've done my best, and I still went out and did it, and then I made a mistake, and I learned from it, and I will go back and try it again and do it from a different perspective. So that's the whole learning process of what we do here as creators and live streamers.
Give yourself grace and grow forward.
That
You
there
know,
needs to be on a T-shirt somewhere for every for every that can be for live streaming, that can be for life, that can be for business, all of
everything.
it, everything. That's the again that's the wisdom and the gold that you get from having these conversations, right?
Exactly. And see, I have these conversations because I'm a curious individual. I want to learn. I want to connect. I want to get better at this humaning stuff.
And, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something that's probably going to be a journey that will continue to evolve until the candle flickers out. So,
Exactly. As it should. Now,
it, it,
see, I remind my children, um, they think there is a terminus to education. Like, no, you're not done learning until you're done living. So there's always something else to learn. Things change. I mean, using technology, the phone you have today is different than the phone you had 10 years ago.
right, and
People have adapted. I mean, there are still five people that are hanging on to flip phones where texting is a all-day adventure. But the rest of us have adapted and moved on. It's like, oh, well, this is way easier. And hey, hilarity ensues. You go with voice to text. That's not what I said. Okay, please stop. Yeah, it's all funny. But we adapt, we move forward, we grow.
yeah, and the whole part about it is like the technology and the evolution of how we communicate is ever present and ever evolving faster than we can almost keep up with it.
Absolutely.
Um, and that's the whole part about it is that something that we can master today will probably be obsolete within a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line. You know, but
Really?
that, yeah. So for an example, let me give you an example. Right. This is what's this one. So if you mastered the Dewey Decimal System when you were in high school, how prevalent is it to you now? So even for people now who don't know what the Dewey Decimal System is, that's how when the evolution of things happen, that things that we can create that we might see as staples suddenly become obsolete because there's someone somewhere who's always looking for a solution to that problem to make it a little bit easier.
Exactly. The magic comes in, well, gee, just because that's always the way it's been done, I think there's something better. And there is. If people are determined to find something easier, they will.
Yeah, and and that's still, but that's how society works. We look for things that are going to make what we do easier, so that we don't have to go through the struggle of what might have been done in the past for so long, because that was the only way they knew how. So somebody comes along and says, we got to revolutionize this. We have to create something that's going to make everything easier. So that's why I said the technologies that we have now in the next few years will be obsolete in how we go back and deal with them. So like I'm learning right now, I'm learning about what NFTs and Web3 and blockchain is, because I see that there is an evolution of what they're trying to create from one sect of technology and creation to another. So I want to learn to evolve as well, and what that actually means, instead of me waiting around and going, oh my gosh, what is this? I don't know. I'm always talking about being proactive, not reactive to things that happen around me. And that is, for most people, what usually happens. So, um, again, prime example of why I think you have to be proactive in your own life and how things change is because of, if you don't do it, the universe, the world, God, whatever you believe in, has a way of bestowing it upon you anyway. So we learned that in COVID. We learned this in the pandemic, that you could sit pat all you want, but then all of a sudden, when the whole world has to shift and change, you have to shift and change. So we went from you being able to go to the store to buy toilet paper and to everything else, to how you actually work, how now businesses and use Zoom and Skype and everything else to kind of now um, connect with and have conversations. So that's why I say, if you're pre-active in your life, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of things sort of shift for you and it changes. And oh my, I'm changing my lighting back.
And,
I
and
got you.
that's true. The people, I think, should always take comfort in learning something new. Now, here's the thing: that's not always easy,
It's not.
uh, but the ability to learn and adapt, we have to keep working on that. It's one of those. There was a book by Maria Kornikova,
Mm-hmm.
The Biggest Bluff. So she was a journalist and she decided to do a study on poker.
Hmm.
During this, she became a professional poker player. Uh, and where I'm going with this is when you get used to taking risk or evaluating risk, it's like, all right, gee, if I make this change, okay, that went well. The more times that you can make a change, that you can evaluate a risk, you build up a reservoir of doing that. If you never take a risk, then hey, taking any risk is enormous. But if you regularly take risk and expand your comfort zone and knowledge, it's a beautiful thing. You keep doing it.
Yeah. And the whole thing about like I say, the whole thing about doing something like that, right? Is there when you're very proactive and you're wanting to do these things, even the hard things like you're talking about, there's always a reap reward system to how that is. You know, everybody talks about taking those risks, right? The risk reward side of it, how people used to judge that. Well, when you put in the hard work and the effort to do these things, um, you know, that is where you start seeing, and it might be gradual, the benefits that you see out of it, right? But you do eventually do see the benefits of what you're doing or what you're creating or what you're learning or what you're implementing in your life. I mean, it's just the natural progression of it. I mean, again, you can sit there and wait, right? Um, and give up on it. And I love this analogy. So Les Brown talks about how, and I'm a big Les Brown fan. He always talks about how the bamboo grows. Bamboos don't start to sprout until about 5 years after they've been planted. So if you plant it and you put it in there and you say nothing's growing, in 3 months nothing's growing, in 6 months nothing's growing, in a year, 2 years nothing's growing, you know, and you give up on it and watering it and nurturing it and getting to the point, you're not going to see it sprout. You're not going to see the benefits of what you've actually planted there. So some processes are like that. Some things that you do in your life are like that. There are longer investments in what you want to do, but then when it starts to sprout, you it starts to sprout quickly and rapidly and huge, and you start seeing, oh my gosh, this is everything that you've done and spent in time to do this.
Exactly. And with that, the old adage, comparison is the thief of joy. You can't compare it to how fast someone else is learning something or how fast they are growing into something. It's all at your own pace. Growth happens on an individual level.
Yeah, yeah, and that's part. Look, that's the tricky part of where I say sometimes social media can do this to you, is because you might see somebody else who might be in the same career field or in the same thing. You don't know the backstory, but you see them, you see a growth and you see something take off, right? It could have been something they did 2 years ago that you're starting to see now the benefits of it. You're like, man, how is this person now doing this and getting to this point? But you don't know exactly what they went into that process. And, you know, that is exactly, thank you, Hope, for sharing that. That's awesome. That is a wonderful watch to go back and just listen to what he has to share and why it's so, again, it's so prevalent to how we, again, do things in our lives. You know, sometimes we want the ability to rush things over and over again, and it doesn't happen. The you know, the saying of the people saying it was an overnight success, that is again a total misnomer for a lot of folks, because that person probably spent 10 years in their in a 10,000 hours, if you like listen to what Seth Godin and talk about, spending 10,000 hours in what you're doing and getting to that point to master what you've been doing. And it might be 9.5 years before somebody discovers it and discovers
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. And hey, 10,000 hours for one person is different for somebody else.
Yes, it is.
All right. So I learned how to swim as an adult. That was probably the most challenging thing I've done. And other people I know started around the same time. Hey, 6 months later, they were doing an Ironman. Like, wait a second. Okay.
Whoa.
I'm still in the pool at, okay, wait, a mile or 2 miles? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that, but you can't compare yourself to say
No,
that's like me you like you comparing yourself to Michael Phelps. I mean, come on. Uh,
exactly. It's, the perseverance required to make that individual growth. That's what matters. So,
yes.
keep showing up, keep putting in the work. So, all right, we can all start out with, the expertise that you have because you've done now a lot,
A lot.
a lot. You've put in the
Yeah.
work.
Put in
We
the work.
start, we have to start where we are and overcome that inertia. of not moving. Get started, get in motion. A body in motion stays in motion. A body at
Hmm.
rest stays at rest. So you
Yes.
can pick whichever one you want. Stay in
Right.
motion, keep growing, keep learning.
That's right. That's Newton's law. That's what of inertia and how it actually works. So, um, but that's for again we. So Stephen Pressfield wrote a book called the War of Art, and he calls it resistance. Um, because that is what we put in front of us. So we use other words for it, procrastination, whatever, but we put up resistance in how we want to actually go out there and do these things, right? Because people, again, uh, the simplistic idea of turning on a camera on your phone and going live scares people, and they want to go, well, I don't have the right lighting, or I've probably seen this expert say that I got to get a microphone to do my live streams, when it's as simple as just going here on your phone and turning it on and saying, hey, I'm going to go live right now on Instagram. It is that simple. I can turn this on now. Folks, in just a few seconds, you're going to see where I'm at, and then you're going to see me live. I'm live streaming right now on Instagram. Hello, Instagram. How simple was that? We actually did it. We did a live stream inside of a live stream, and it took us all of what, um, few seconds to literally turn it on and start talking and getting people to engage and say hello. I mean, that is how simple it is to actually start the process.
It is. And, all right, addressing one of the most common fears I hear is perfectionism. It has to
Oh,
be perfect. No, you just have to start. You just have to, because mistakes will happen. We're all still these flawed humans. We are bound to make mistakes, but you can't let that stop you. You can't let that deter you from reaching your goal. Okay, great.
yes.
You made a mistake. Got that out of the way. Keep going.
Again, I'm trying. I think it was what Thomas Edison who did however many experiments he got to before he actually invented the light bulb and was able to get it to even not even to perfection, just to get it to actually work and to function. So it took all those times of going over and over again, failure after failure after failure after failure, and then going back and reevaluating, going again, doing it again. So, that's the whole idea behind it. And again, you don't have to have perfectionism to get to that point. I mean, again, there's no, I'm not going to remember the names, but the whole idea behind flying, the Wright brothers or the Wright brothers who were the first in flight. There was actually another cooperative that was doing this and was trying to actually perfect flight and get started in doing it before he was even a thing. So they had lots of money and backing and everything else. And the Wright brothers just owned a bicycle shop, and they just used principle and know-how and practice and failure until they got to that point, um, and on how to get what they wanted to do when they actually flew, and they were the first times to do it over at Kitty Hawk, and the other, again, the other team. This guy had a lot of press. He had a team around him. He had money. He had scientists. They went back and looked at it again and again, and because of their inability to say, okay, we failed this again, they didn't want to keep going back and going over and over, and again, it hampered them, and they're just a side note in history.
Exactly. And yeah, perseverance. Um, all right. So, one of the things I always ask, because I'm a curious individual on these
Mm-hmm.
conversations, you've laced this conversation with a few books. What's the last book that you read that you would recommend?
Ooh, so there was so I read a book here, and I'm going to pull it up for you guys to do because I want you to. It's called the 12-week year, um, and now I love to take in audiobooks because I consume them a lot faster. It fits into my schedule, but this is the book right here. It's called the. Oop, there you go. The 12-week year, and let me pull it back maybe, right? And it's written by Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington. So, and it kind of talks to you about how you go back and manage how you put out goals and objectives. You know, people sometimes will, again, the whole idea and the notion of doing a New Year's resolution, this kind of talk about you're going to fail. You're destined. You're creating yourself an opportunity to fail by saying I'm planning out my whole year at the beginning of at the beginning of the first day of January, and this talks about how you can break it down into segments and almost looking at it how, again, people report their earnings and stuff. They do it quarterly. They go back and they go, quarter one, this is what I did. This is the goals that we did. I didn't hit on these, or we did hit on these, or we went beyond. So, it kind of gets you in that mindset of, hey, let's create an objective on how I want to pursue my goals, and then set the milestones that I want to go do, and then I can set points of reference for me to go back and use measurables and things like, even people who talk about using KPIs to measure what they do. It at least gives you the baseline of how to operate, what you want to set for your goals, and then say, okay, first quarter, I either did really well or I failed miserably. How can I go back and sort of recalibrate these and go back and try for the second quarter to hit what I wanted to do?
Hmm.
So it breaks it down into easier small chunks of how you actually use your time and how you can actually be successful doing it.
Okay.
So I love it. It's a really great book. I love those kind of books that help you, that give you the idea of not only learning a little bit more clarity on how to set your objectives, but then giving you the ideas and the processes to actually go do it and implement these sort of things in your life. So
I am adding it to the reading queue,
yes,
the
it's
the never ending reading queue, and I love that.
yeah. Yes, and hope, I love this comment. I plan the next 6 months of
Yeah. And all right, I hope, thank you so much for the value that you are adding to this conversation.
oh yes, 100%.
It is noticed,
Um,
it is appreciated.
it is. I love this, and people who take the initiative to go do these things. So, but again, when we talk about the one currency, I always talk about the currency. This is one currency that we can never gain back. There's you've heard stories and tales of people losing their money and gaining their fortune back in tenfold. There's stories of it in the Bible. There's stories of it in everywhere that you want to look around. But the currency of time is the one thing we cannot get back. So once you waste it, it is gone. It is not yours to. It is not yours to control anymore or help manage. So that's why, like, I want to look at how I manage my time and being able to maximize what I do, and then put in everything else that I've talked about in there. So if my objectives are, a little bit of self care, a little bit of business, a little bit of create, just set my goals and then timelines of what I want to do and start doing them, and just taking the action on the things that I already know I'm either going to be capable of, or things that I'm going to have to go back and readjust. So, I mean,
True.
that for me is how I always operate. And people want to know exactly how I'm able to do 100 live streams. How do I do manage another job? How do I manage 4 kids? How do I manage being in such a busy lifestyles? Because I learn how to manage time and find
Yeah,
ways to make things easier for me.
that is so true. And the hashtag everyone should be following.
Is unfiltered live, guys. So I go live again Monday through Friday, 8:15 Eastern Standard Time. It's a 45-minute show. We do a few intros and segments and stuff, and then we have a 30-minute conversation with our guest. Um, we welcome all comers who want to come in. I'm also like, believe me, I got room for anybody who wants to reach out and come on the show. I mean, 100 slots is a lot to fill for those who don't who don't know when they go out and want to create. And I ask people all the time when I invite them, like, "Hey, do you want to come on?" They're like, yeah, but what day or what kind of schedule? I'm like, well, same time. It's just you picking your day and what's convenient for you. I mean, 100 slots is a lot to fill. So,
It is. And who's the guest tonight?
so tonight's guest is Mr. Kevin D. Turner. Um,
I know him.
I
Well,
think you
okay.
do. So he's the bearded branding one who, again, has been here on LinkedIn. If you don't follow his newsletter, what he does here on the LinkedIn platform, he shares so many. He's got his ear to the ground of what happens on LinkedIn. So when there's new features, new things that break, he's always one of the first sharing that information. So he's a great follow. Again, a great newsletter and just a great individual all around. So he's a guest for this evening's show.
Excellent. And that's 8:15 Eastern Time, unfiltered live.
Yes,
And let's see, that's here on LinkedIn.
here on
Or
LinkedIn. So I
where do you
love to.
stream?
I like to brag. I stream to 5 different platforms. So if you don't even catch me on LinkedIn, I go. You can catch me on Twitter. You can catch me on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and on Twitch. So yeah, streaming is my life and what I do as a career. So um, I spread my net pretty cast my net pretty wide. Because I want anybody and everybody to kind of just hear what I have to see, share, and hopefully find what I do interesting and a little bit of value out of it and have a few laughs. So that's what I love to do.
Absolutely. And I encourage everybody to, hey, tune in, comment, and then schedule your appearance. Because, all right, I'm going to get in line and schedule mine.
So yes, I will send you the link to book, and it's a pretty simple process. It is, like I said, it is just you literally picking your day and saying, I'm going to go on a random Wednesday because Wednesday will work for me, or for whatever reason. But um, I'm streaming all the way up until December 30th of 2022. So December 30th will be my 100th episode, and then I will wrap everything up, go into the new year, and take my time off before I come back for season 5.
Wow. That's impressive. So, Gabe, thank you a lot for this conversation. I've learned a lot. The uh, get started, overcome the inertia and just start where you are. Don't compare to others. Start in your lane with what you have and just get going. Make it
Oh,
fun.
yeah. Have a again. You don't have. It doesn't have to always be serious, folks. You can, if you have that fun-loving side to you, go ahead and express that. People love when somebody can come on here and just be authentic and be themselves, and that really 9 times out of 10 is what resonates most with most people. So just be you.
Absolutely. And yeah, make sure that you are following Gabe on all the streaming platforms and the yet to be named streaming
That,
platforms.
there's always more coming. So whenever they do, trust me, I try to hop on there and get going on there because for me, this is what I'm passionate about. So when everybody talks about it, they say, "What is your passion?" You're looking at it. This is what I do um, for me as a creator, as an entertainer, and just as a general interest. I love doing this.
And it shows. Gabe, thank you a lot. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, sir. And I do appreciate you as well. And I look forward to now putting you in my hot seat whenever that actually happens. Because
Wait, you didn't mention it was a hot seat.
yeah, it's a hot seat. You come over there, we start asking questions. We want to get down to the nitty gritty of Mr. Christopher Johnson and what he's done in his times in Detroit and learn all about that. I want to learn all about. I love it.
It'll be a fun conversation.
Yes, it will be.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Interested in learning more about any of the items that you've seen in today's session? Leave a comment below. Interested in being a guest? Leave a comment below. I help event planners and organizers produce virtual events. Learn how I can support your virtual event by connecting or leaving a comment. Thanks for watching.